But here's my contention. I believe the next world reserve currency won't be backed by naval superiority. It'll be backed by cyber superiority. The next war, I believe, will be fought with chips, not ships. And so that's why China is so focused on AI, 5G, chip manufacturing, advanced materials. They have 96% of all the citations in AI.
It is nice to have you back here at Market Empire. Mark Yusko, also known as the Market Sniper Investor, shared his perspective on the true state of affairs behind the scenes in an interview with the Market Sniper. The financial assistance and practice of governments, particularly the government of the United States, is worrisome. The ability of governments to print money at their whim and completely disregard any fiscal responsibility has made life more difficult for the working class through inflation. Yusko is of the opinion that everything is being orchestrated so that the wealthy can amass even more wealth. The working class has been pushed further and further into poverty. Yusko believes that cryptography technology, specifically Bitcoin, is the way to combat this situation. This is the reason why so many powerful people in the traditional system are opposed to Bitcoin and take any opportunity to discredit the technology.
It is definitely political theater and has been for years. The idea that there is a ceiling that then gets raised every single time. And the way they do it is they take prisoners, literally, and then exchange for things that one party wants in terms of pork barrel spending. So it's just a horrible system. I prefer the Japanese system, which is, hey, we don't care about debt. We'll just buy it all ourselves. So ultimately, to your question about does it matter someday? In theory, it should, right? Like if you're a household, right? Your household, my household, and we have income, and if our spending exceeds our income, we get in trouble, right? I mean, literally, we get in trouble. And in the old days, you went to debtor's prison. So for governments, it doesn't work that way because they can just turn on the printing press and print their way out. Now, what it does do over time, right, is it channels the wealth from the average person up to the tippy top through inflation, because you have to inflate your way out of the massive debt. And it's sneaky and it's surreptitious, but I actually think that's been the plan all along. So, the average person, you go to Tokyo, they've been in this spiral of too much debt, and everybody said they're going to collapse and the country's going to fail. And they went to 100% debt to GDP, 150% debt to GDP, 200% debt to GDP. No failure. Well, why? Well, because the average person's life really didn't change because they didn't own a lot of stocks and they didn't own a lot of real estate. They rented their apartment and they got paid their salary and they had a nice life and bought nice clothes and had a nice car. But if you look at the industry, right, they've had a whole 2 decades of just lost productivity, no real movement. But the people at the tippy top get super rich because their assets appreciate and they're happy. So I think the same thing's going to happen in the U.S. or has been happening in the U.S. And the average person, as long as they can pay their bills and go out to eat once in a while and pay their rent, they won't revolt, although they probably should. It's unbelievable when you go back in time, actually 110 years now in the U.S. From 1776 to 1913, a dollar was a dollar. Now, I was finding it interesting. I always ask people, where did the dollar come from? The word dollar. Like, I have no idea. Why is it called a dollar? Well, it's because we borrowed the idea from the Rothschilds. Yeah. And it's called the Reichsdollar. And we said, all right, that sounds like a good plan. And the Rothschilds had been in charge of banking for 600 years up to that point, and started the first central bank in the Netherlands. So we said, all right, well, we'll copy that. Now, we didn't have a central bank. So from 1776 to 1913, a dollar was worth a dollar. Had a little fluctuation around 2 world wars. I mean, not world wars, but wars, civil wars. And long story short, in 1913, we created, again, based on the Rothschild model, the central bank, the Federal Reserve, which I always joke is neither federal nor has any reserves. It's literally a small group of people controlled this central bank. It's owned by the other banks. And its job isn't to promote stability and low inflation. Its job is to slowly steal the wealth of the masses and widen that Gini coefficient. And if you look from time in 1913, when there was very low income and wealth disparity, to today, 110 years later, it's massive, the greatest of history. So, but if you think about cryptography, why is cryptography so important? Cryptography is really important because it allows the creation of unique assets in the digital world. And that's a really, really, really important thing. So what Satoshi Nakamoto gave us, whoever he, she, they are, yes, Bitcoin's wonderful and amazing and very important, but it's more than that. It's the ability to create a unique asset in the digital ecosystem. And what does that mean? Well, again, record albums. Grew up playing record albums, physical, analog devices, black vinyl disc, you put it on a turntable, you spun it around, made music. Well, then they're like, well, but I could record that electronically and call it an MP3 file. And then I could copy paste, send you a copy, and you could listen to a song, I could listen to a song, and we were both happy. But the music industry was very unhappy because they wanted you to buy your own song and me to buy my own song. So what did they do? They shut down Napster and they shut down any way of copying music. And now what do? We all stream digitally, uniquely identified through cryptography, and we all have to pay, which is the way it should be. And more importantly, because we know when a streaming service plays a song, the artist actually gets paid instead of, it going off into the ether. So the ability to have digital assets and beyond music, stocks, bonds, currencies, commodities, art, real estate, private businesses, once everything is on a blockchain, and the blockchain is just simply an open public ledger, but once it's cryptographically secure in a line item, which is what a token is. A token is not a thing. It's not a little piece of gold. A token is a line item in a ledger that is cryptographically secure and says who owns what. So I own a Bitcoin, you own a Bitcoin, I own a piece of property, you own a piece of property. All of that is nicely laid out in this public ledger, and we have truth. And what's cool about truth is it replaces the need for trust. In the old days, the last 800 years, we had to rely on trust. Trusted third parties, banks, insurance companies, brokerage firms. And I right now have to trust that my money that sits at Bank of America is actually there and they didn't take it, right? Because it's my word against theirs. And so I have to trust them. Well, if I have a Bitcoin on a hard drive or on a cold storage device, I don't have to trust anybody. I have truth. I have an entry on a ledger that says Mark owns that Bitcoin. That is frightening for the powers that be because they like being the trusted third parties, right? Bank of America likes the fact that they can tell me, oh, I'm sorry, you can only transfer $25,000 out of your bank account. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, that's the daily limit. That's all you can take. That's unbelievable to me. It's supposedly my money, but it's not. It's the bank's money. I have an IOU, and I trust that they'll make good on that IOU. But in this new world of cryptographically secure assets on blockchains, don't need that. And that is extremely frightening. And here's the one thing. Jamie Dimon was in Davos, and he got up and he was, pissing all over Bitcoin and saying it was a Ponzi, and everybody got mad. Guys, don't get mad. Celebrate. Celebrate what? The guy's a jerk. I'm yeah, but here's the thing. He's one of the most powerful people in the world. You may not like him, but just factually, he, in charge of JP Morgan, is one of the most powerful people in the world. Full stop. Okay. He gets his 10 minutes of fame at Davos on CNBC. He could talk about anything he wanted to. He could talk about the weather. He could have talked about crickets. He could have talked about anything he wanted. What is he talking about? Bitcoin. He says, no, well, that was because Joe Kernan made him. Like, look, when you get interviewed, you don't have to answer the question. You deflect and redirect, right? You could ask me a question, and I could decide I want to answer that question. Or I could say, Francis, I'm going to deflect. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So Jamie could have deflected, but instead he talked about Bitcoin. Now, why did he talk so negatively about Bitcoin? Well, because it threatens his hegemony. It threatens the bank's hegemony. And here's the thing. I have this thing that I believe. You can judge the quality of an idea by the quality of its detractors. If you have an idea and no one cares, it's really not an important idea. If you have an idea and the average person disagrees with you, not really that important.
Do you agree with Yusko's assessment? How soon do you see crypto completely replacing the current method? Leave a comment with your ideas below, and we appreciate you tuning in to Market Empire. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel.